Mm-hmm. Work on this while I wait. Bring that up more. That one. Just working on this while I'm waiting for Karen to hop on here. It's a cover that is actually going to be going up for sale in probably next month because I'm doing some testing and all of that kind of stuff on this. So it's been kind of fun. But just waiting on my co-host while I do this. Yeah. Just working on a project while I wait for my co-host to show up. Kind of doing some painting on a project that I'm probably going to put up for sale later. Yeah. Work on her. This here. Just working on this while I wait on my partner. She had to finish up something, but this is a cover that I'm going to be putting up for sale probably next month. So it's got a lot of ways to go, but I'm really happy with how she's turning out. She's not... I've been doing a lot of level ups on my customs and have not had the time to actually work on my... to like do any pre-mades that I could show people. So I'm really excited to get to do that. So yeah, that's what I'm doing while I wait for my co-host to show up. Yeah. How are things? I know I'm like super exciting right now. This one. Okay, I'll go darker. Like that. Yes. That actually makes a lot of sense because yeah, for me when I was doing this, one, I wanted to work on getting it so that it felt sort of like she was coming at you. Like I know on book covers, like when I see something like that, it jumps out at me big time. And I kind of had this idea for almost like a fallen goddess sort of vibe. So, which I'm really excited because on this, her face is the only thing that's a stock photo. And that's just because it's really hard to get eyes to feel like they're alive. So like everything else in this is either a 3D render or painting that I've done. So I'm really, really happy with like how it's actually turning out. It's one of those ones that if it doesn't sell, I am totally okay with that because I would be just fine keeping it and like using it myself. Ooh, there she is.
We're talking about different categories.
Hey,
nice to meet you. Hello. That's looking really good.
Thanks. Figured while it was behaving and I was hanging out, I'd work a little bit.
Yeah.
And now people get stuck seeing me again.
Awesome. I was just saying we're going to talk about PNR this week.
Yes. Sorry, my phone's like freaking out.
What is that noise?
My phone apparently decided it had updates it wanted to try doing right at this exact moment. So, you know.
Helpful there. Yes. Just what you need.
Maybe that's why TikTok Live froze up on me and made stuff disappear.
Yeah.
But then I've also got a world that's like bouncing.
Have you got a PNR board up? Or
I have the two that I was working on, and then honestly, working on marketing the book kind of suddenly took over my life, which is expected.
Yeah.
But
it is. I remember those days.
I've sent out 103 arcs. I've got another 40 something to send out tonight. And those will have the like edits for the couple of typos that got caught with the first round. So I'm going to have around 150 arcs go out, which for 22 authors, including a couple like international best-selling authors to be part of it, and for so far my story to be the only thing that's been mentioned in any reviews, I'm like, okay.
Oh, wow.
Like, I'm feeling pretty good about this.
Yeah.
It's kind of that catch-22 though right now of like, I'm really glad that people are loving it because that makes me feel really good. But at the same time, the book that I actually have fully edited, like ready to be published, is not the continuation for this like story. So I'm like, it's not as like romantic, and so I'm like, well, we'll see how that goes. I've got two series that I'm writing right now. Yeah.
Oh. So you want to get to PNR covers?
Yes.
I've got a couple of Pinterest boards open. I've got to work out how to flip the camera again without hanging up this fun flip camera.
Side at the bottom. There you go.
There we go.
Yes.
I get rid of the menu now because I can't see the screen.
So tonight we wanted to talk about like paranormal romance, but the difference between man chest covers for it for marketing and selling the book versus people, like full people, because they're both like named the same. I mean, they're for a lot of them, they're both named paranormal romance, but they really are different kinds of books. And
they are very different, aren't they?
Yeah.
Here's the man chest one.
It's one of those kind of weird little things that you have to watch for when you're listing your stuff on Amazon, because they do just have the one category, and like the other ones are so important on what you put it in, because when you just research, you type in paranormal romance, all of a sudden you get both man chest and non-man chest. And
yeah. In fact, I think actually there's the man chest ones, but there's also couple ones and then single girl ones. And sometimes single guy ones, especially the Fae.
Paranormal romance also includes the shifter. There's also the trend of the shifter reverse harem paranormal romance, where sometimes it's just a woman and you can't tell that it's a reverse or it's her with the wolves. Like, there's so many tropes, and I think it's just so fascinating how much this breaks down into.
Definitely. I love this genre.
I do too.
Yeah.
Very needy dog for a second. Go ahead. Good boy. But yeah. So what would you like to start with on this?
I think let's start with the man chest, since they are so obviously different to all of the others.
It's true.
You know, the others have that similar look, however many people there are, but the man chest are vastly different.
Yes. They really are.
So what do you see as like the main thing on man chest?
Well, obviously man chest, like very important feature there.
Yes.
But a lot of paranormal romance man chest, I'm not going to go in the sci-fi direction. I mean, you're more than welcome to if you want, because that's technically kind of part of that. But Well, and then it's kind of hard too because right now with the trends starting to come in with like monster paranormal romance, like it's hard to differentiate that line of monster versus shifter versus like
Mm-hmm.
it's breaking down into so many categories right now. It's fascinating to watch because I mean, I've been doing this for a year and a half and like these were not subcategories you had to mess with a year and a half ago. Like the
No,
covers did
no,
not
no. I
reflect that.
finished a monster romance like what last week, I think it was, and I've got another one next week.
Oh, that's so cool.
So they're really
Ooh,
taking
that's
off.
a good like direction for you since you started with the
Mm,
like lit RPGs. You already had the experience with some of the like monster aspect, and then
yep,
kind of twisting that into your love for the like paranormal romance and fantasy romance. Like that's cool. That's a
it
good
is
niche
cool.
for you.
Yeah, I got to put a three-headed dog on a cover the other day. So
Oh, that's
you can't
awesome.
get better than that.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh dear.
So definitely,
So back to the man chest.
yes. So like this, I would say Manchester. It is kind of interesting because depending on the type of Manchester for like the type of paranormal romance, the amount of face that shows changes a bit. So like for example, Shifter right now tends to have less face showing than Monster or like I said, sci-fi also kind of still qualifies in that a little bit for paranormal romance. Like I'm still seeing a lot of
Yeah,
stuff
very
listed
simple.
in that.
Kind of wasn't going to include sci-fi romance.
Yeah, I was like, they're totally on their
Yeah,
own.
because they're kind of slightly different.
Yeah. But yeah,
But
that I would say that's probably a good differentiation between them though. And then also most shifter, how do you put it? Most Manchester shifter that at least I have been noticing has had for a long time there was like the trend that whatever the shifter was, you had to have like the animal or like whatever they were on the cover with them. And that's still a very strong thing, but I've been
I
noticing
see that
veering
bit. But
away from that and really hitting the
yeah,
tropes instead. So like
yeah,
I've been seeing more of like if it's a wolf shifter, it being acceptable for there to be like the moon instead of having to have a wolf behind him, or like having the dragon scales on him or wings or something like that instead of having to have like an actual like
yeah.
that kind of thing.
What I see, and a lot of my research has been, is like Manchester's from here, so
Yeah.
like the tip of the nose down to mid thigh-ish, because
Yeah.
the bottom's kind of there's the title down there, because you always have the title at the bottom if you're cutting the top of the head off, because
Hmm.
otherwise there's no room for topography. So the bottom bit's always covered up anyway, but you've got to show the nice abs.
Yeah.
And I see a lot of tattoos as well, and
Yes.
quite often the animal that they shift into, like the dragon or the wolf or whatever, that is reflected in the tattoo. I see a lot,
Yes.
especially the dragon ones. Um,
It has, but I will note though, if it's a paranormal romance where the guy has wings, it is
mm,
shifting big time to having the full face for the guy. I think to kind of like give room for the wings to really be a part of it.
yeah, because it's hard to show those wings if you've only got this much space. Because
Yeah, or
I've done
like
a couple of those, and yeah, it is. It's really hard. You can just sort of just about see a little bit here. That's it.
yeah. Well, like for example, like this is still
Yes.
technically for a
Oh, I love
Northman chest,
that
but
one.
it has a full face because he has wings.
Yes.
This technically it's hard to see, but this is technically man chest with wings. But then when you go to without wings, then you have less face actually showing. So that is definitely
Yeah.
something to kind of think about too for that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've seen a few shifter ones, like wolf shifter ones as well, where you can see the face. But
Yeah.
I'm finding the vast majority when I did my research are like tip and nose down so that you can't see the face.
Yeah.
So I always try and not include the face. But, you
I
know,
think it helps with the steamy aspect
yeah.
of it because that is one thing that really I think is not always a line, but I will say I do feel like more often than not, the content of the book for a man chest tends to be steamier and have more steamy scenes in it than people on the cover
Okay.
based. Like from my reading, at least, I could be totally wrong on like how
Yeah.
they from my experience of what I've read versus the covers I've been seeing on them and even the cover redos. But I have noticed I have been seeing more and more recovers on series that had the man chest with less face showing and them pushing
Yeah.
more of the actual face and from like the waist up entirely. Like I am seeing more and
Yeah.
more.
Yeah. Yeah. I've got a recover going on next week for one of these as well, man chest. So it's going to be interesting. Yeah.
And I feel like I have been noticing too. I mean, if we're gonna go, like, there's been a crossbreed that's been interesting too,
Mhm.
of Manchest, but where it is the couple with a lot more touching. And it's been kind of interesting watching designers try to do that middle ground because Amazon, especially for Amazon ads, it's so finicky about where they
Yes.
can touch, how they can touch, what their body language is. And like honestly,
Hmm.
I have authors, I don't do steamy. But when I have authors and I like refer them to somebody else, the main thing that I tell them is like, look, book one is the important one to make sure you can do ads on. After that, if you want to go steamier covers, that's fine. But you're
Yeah.
not normally going to run ads on book three and not on book one. Like you're normally going to do, hey,
Yeah.
you're normally going to run an ad on book one. So that's the one to make sure is going to be 100% okay for Amazon ads. Um,
Yeah. I do actually do steamy, both sides, if you like. So like, the steamy couple, the steamy just the guy, but also the steamy just the girl sometimes.
yeah.
Although I'm moving away from that. And what I found is that sometimes, especially with the just the girl one, that authors have to keep resubmitting it, because there's the tropes. You got to stick to the tropes.
Yep.
And if you put it through, sometimes it gets rejected and sometimes it doesn't. One of my authors submitted it 6 times, and on the 6th time he was okay, allowed to do ads. It was
That's
it's crazy.
well, and then it's
Yeah.
interesting too because I've been hearing from some authors that they'll like get approved finally for ads and then like it'll get flagged as it's going. I actually had an author that did that like her ads got approved
Yep.
and then it got flagged. And like I said, that's why
Yeah.
my normal suggestion is like book one,
Yes.
let it like
Less steamy. Yeah. And
steamy
it's
and then
it's easier for normal like PNR
yeah,
and things, and like your man chest covers. It's a lot easier to go less steamy, but the actual harem ones where it's just the girl, it's almost
really hard.
impossible to go less steamy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a tough balance. Like I said, it's part of why I'm kind of glad I don't have the time to have to like worry about it, which is horrible to say.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
There's one of the plus sides to me having to cut back on what genres I'm
Yeah.
booking is just I
Yeah.
don't have time to do everything anymore. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I did want to add to something. I mentioned the covers that like I'm starting to see more symbolism for Manchester stuff. I want to show this one really quick because
Okay.
I'm starting to see more and more of this, and I know you've been seeing some of this too. Let me flip this back around
Mm.
again. But more of this kind of stuff where
Oh
like
yeah.
you can tell, like both of these you can tell that there's something, but they're not like this where you actually are seeing the animals. Like I'm seeing more of
Yes.
this showing up, and honestly, I personally consider it a big level up. So,
Yes.
no
I
complaints
love
here.
that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's going to be interesting to see something like that. I think it'll be fun to do one like that. Kind of
I
have
will
the animal, but not.
yeah. Well, and I will say I think this is one thing that's going to make it actually so that indie authors have a leg up on traditional because traditional takes
Mm.
so long to publish a book that
Does.
indie authors are able to hit the trends for the cover tropes when they're
Yep.
happening if they choose to and
Yes.
trad really doesn't have that.
No, it
But
doesn't.
I mean like I said I've been doing this a year and a half and the tropes are not the same for a lot of it.
Yeah. And I've done, several trad covers, and I don't think any of them are out yet. I think the first one comes out in a few weeks' time, and I
Nice.
finally get to sort of show that one off. But yeah, that was done quite a while ago.
Hmm.
So
Yeah. I think
yeah,
most of my friends that
indie
have
authors
actually
got a big
published trad
advantage.
said that normally it took like 2 to 3 years by the time they got signed before it actually got out into things.
Wow. Yeah,
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 it's crazy.
it is crazy. Yeah, yeah. I'm not sure how long it's been. I think it's only been sort of 3 or 4 months for this one.
That's not bad.
But
That's a
yeah, it's not too
smaller
bad.
press, right?
But yes, yeah, they're in New York, but it's a lot smaller.
Yeah.
But
They
you know,
probably move a
I don't
little.
know how long it was from when they got signed. You know.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
That's a really good point. Yeah. And then, so like, you kind of have the man chest, and we talked about how like there is that sort of transition. There's a couple designers that we know that have been sharing some stuff they've been working on with me for customs that I'm seeing as
Yeah.
recovers that are like nailing the transition like trope of the couple with the man chest. But then it's been interesting to see um, even the single girl and or that kind of like the person based paranormal romance.
Yes.
It's been so fun seeing how that's been changing because for the longest time I felt like they all looked the same. I mean, honestly,
They did kind of. Yeah.
like, and it's been
Yeah. Well, I've
so
got
fun
one here that's.
seeing. Oh, please do, because yeah, seeing the
I've got
transition
one
in
here that's
storytelling.
like that.
Oh yes,
There we go. That's the sort of Manchester couple.
yeah. Well, and I would even say, I mean, you don't actually see his chest, but um, Jame and Eve's series. Flip this back around.
Uh-huh.
This one, a lot of the covers are that transitionary man
Oh,
chest
yeah.
too, because he is like that. And there's so much storytelling in this and in all of the covers
Hmm.
for this genre. Um,
Yeah.
and then like it kind of moves from like the transition man chest to the actual couples where it still has the steamy type vibes. I
Yes.
love those. But
Yeah,
then
they're nice.
we are still seeing also a lot of like this kind of stuff too, where you have the wolves, but even this
Yep.
one, like if there weren't the wolves, even the claw marks, like this one also has. I love the typography claw marks for that. Like we're
Yes.
seeing a lot of that starting to show up, which I think is a lot of fun.
Hmm. Yeah.
But even like looking at all of them, definitely like a common trope line that I'm seeing for um, all paranormal romance still is very high contrast, very high saturation, um, and even the typography.
Except for the vampire one.
Yeah, but even the vampire ones, the red is still pushing a higher saturation
Yeah.
than what you see in most
Yes.
fantasy.
Yeah. Just the rest of it's very, very desaturated
Yeah,
rather than just being nice red and in with colours. It's like almost black and white with red.
yeah, that's true. And that also when it comes to paranormal romance, a lot of it tends to stay in just one or two colors. Um, they're not nearly as like fantasy tends to have a much broader
Yeah.
range of coloring, but paranormal romance is
Yeah.
definitely staying more one or two like basic colors, and those super high saturated, and then most of the rest of it, if there is other rest of it, is like basically grays to like balance that.
Yeah. Which is nice.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, it definitely makes it jump out at you and it gives it an energy that you want for the paranormal romance. Like for paranormal anything, you want that energy to it.
Yeah. Yeah. And the glow.
Oh, I'm a
Yeah.
sucker for glow. I'm trying really hard to like. I remember when I first started doing book covers, I so badly wanted to be able to do the glow and I just could not figure it out. And now that I figured it
Yeah.
out, that's not really my style because I don't work as like I do
Oh, no.
romance, but I'm like my style went a different direction and I'm like, I mean,
Yeah.
you just saw like some of the stuff that I'm starting to work on. I'm loving the direction I'm going. So I'm not complaining, but it's just not where I thought I was going to be a while ago.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, and hi, have you all done any horror? I have not. I don't do horror. That's one of the genres I don't go near. It's not for me. Too much of a wuss.
Yeah, I'm
Have
a
you done any,
wuss.
Jamie?
I did when I first started, and I I'm a wuss too, honestly.
Yeah. Yes.
I am.
Don't like horror.
I have a cover that I love that's not like a full horror that I still technically have up for sale, and I'm kind of considering Black Friday. I'm planning on doing a like big sale on whatever is in my pre-made
That's a good
store,
idea.
and
Yeah.
I have one that's not actually horror, but it's like a almost like a zombie superhero type thing. And I love it, but I'm really tempted to just use it in my portfolio and not actually sell it because I don't know if I would be able to do it justice to be able to like make it into a series. Like if it
Got
sells, it may have to be one of those things where I'm like, look, here is this, but I genuinely don't think I could like match it at this point just because I've
Yeah.
moved in such a completely and totally different direction. So I've been
Yeah.
really tempted to
Yeah.
like offer it really, really cheap once and then take it off the market. And
Yeah. I mean, you could always put up, I mean, I know when I put on mine, I put a little kind of um, like explanation, if you like, I guess. So I've
yeah,
got, continuations available or whatever. And you could always say on that one, this is a one cover only, no continuations. If you've got somewhere like that. And,
yeah. I don't
because
normally do
sometimes you
that.
find stock and you think, oh, it's just so gorgeous. And there just
Yeah.
isn't another one for the rest of the series. And you just have to go, okay, I'm just going to make a single one and someone can buy it for an anthology or something.
That's how this one was because Raven,
Yeah, Lone
Raven with
story.
two V's, it was one of hers. And that
Yeah.
was exactly how it was for me. I was like, this is awesome. I need to do something with this. And then, like, let me see if my internet's
Ooh,
good.
your phone is having problems.
Yeah.
I just had yes.
Yeah, so they're in the
Oh dear.
process of adding a couple massive neighborhoods, like right in the same area of me,
Oh,
and so my internet has been a total mess since then. But
oh boy.
yeah,
Yeah. Have you found it
I did.
so we can see it? Ah, cool.
Like I
Oh
love
yeah.
this cover. It looks so cool. But I genuinely like there's no way I'd be able to make this model myself or like there's no way.
Yeah.
That's not
No.
something I can pretend.
Yeah. Oh dear. Yeah.
So, what about? I would love to hear your thoughts first, because I will say, out of the two of us,
Uh-huh.
we've definitely gone in different directions with how we do it. Unstable
Yeah.
connection again,
It's
sorry.
quite interesting.
But I would love to
Yeah.
know, like, for paranormal romance, your thoughts on the tropes for typography.
Topography. Well, I think it probably needs to be along the lines of urban fantasy, where it's silver, gold, or whatever. I do see some that are just white, but I rarely see, at least on the couples one. We're talking couples, not Manchester here.
Yeah,
Couples or singles. I rarely see colors. It's usually gold, silver, or white. Um, there's always serif fonts.
hmm,
Sometimes they're like fantasy fonts.
yeah,
Usually they're capitals. There's the occasional one that's done lowercase, but I think that's probably author request rather than a trope.
yeah,
Um, and sometimes there's flowy bits. I guess it depends on how much romance there is and how much versus how much paranormal. If
yes,
there's a lot of romance, I see a lot of swirlies. But if there's less romance, more paranormal, I see more um, interesting fonts, I should say, kind of like more fantasy like fonts rather than
yeah.
your sort of more plainer ones with the swirlies. Does that make sense?
It totally does. Well, and that's the thing. I've had a lot of people asking me recently about fonts for urban and paranormal fantasy, and I think that's a really like key point. Is definitely like basically all of them that you're seeing are done in all caps with basically no lowercase,
Yes.
even the author name, USA Today bestseller, like everything on there. And definitely serif fonts. I agree. Um, and it's been kind of fun seeing that, like, it's definitely been staying in the golds and silvers and whites and like that kind of thing. But I am seeing a lot more texture and like
Yeah.
flares,
Fun
so like
stuff.
shiny type thing to make
Yeah.
it like really pop. I'm seeing a lot more of that, which has been really fun. And yeah,
Yeah.
it's no matter what the genre is, no matter if it's contemporary romance or paranormal, like it's so interesting that literally the shape of each letter of the fonts completely changes like the subconscious, the subliminal
Yeah.
messaging for the marketing of your cover
Yeah.
to
It
tell your
totally does.
audience how steamy it is or how much
Yeah.
romance is in it. Like, for example, a lot of times if it's more pointed, I guess I should say, um, they tend to be more rough, steamy type interior, like storyline, if that makes sense. But then, like the
Got
more
yeah.
swirly type stuff tends to lean more into the sweeter
Yes.
romance.
Yes.
And paranormal romance, it's all going to have some form of romance to it. So it's kind of
Yeah.
interesting to see. And honestly, so obviously sometimes it falls down to just the actual designer. Because
Yeah.
you do way better with like the extra swirlies than I do. I am way more clean cut.
I like
I'm
this
leaning
space.
into a small bit, but you are definitely way better at that than I am.
Thank you.
There's a It's true. I've always been so jealous of that. You have no idea. Even when we first met, I was like, you're the first person I ever sent
Oh, dear.
typography to, and I was like, help me fix it. How do I make this pretty?
Oh dear. I spend at least an hour, I think, on topography, just going through, and I go through pretty much all my fonts, and I think, yeah, I like this one as the base. And
Yeah,
if it's a custom, then I'll customize it. But if it's a pre-made, I,
I don't
usually
either.
just
Yeah.
go with what's there. Yeah.
That is
But
something that I do. Like,
I
I
just
get
like
people
that
who
bit.
send me covers all the time go, I want this font. And I'm like, I can guarantee you that is a customized font because I recognize the pieces of this from this one, the pieces of this from this one, and this looks like it's been
Yeah.
personally sketched. Like, this is not a font I can purchase and give you.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. Yeah. I'm finding there's a very, very limited amount of fonts you can use because so many of them have that like really, really, really thin line of one side, sort of, is it
yes.
calligraphy kind of thing? So it's like super thin on one area and then you can't read it in thumbnail.
No.
So I
Yeah.
end up like not using the fonts.
I agree. I've got a lot of fonts, and really, ultimately, for the most part, I have probably 10 or 15 that I actually use regularly.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, same,
that's definitely a problem.
same.
But I will say, I do like some of the. I'm glad that you stumbled onto TikTok today as well. Yes, she's saying she didn't realize how much she was craving design talk. Well, most Friday nights,
Oh,
Karen and I pop on here and we talk about different genres and cover design and
yep,
like the marketing side of it because I mean, you're a designer, but at the same time, most authors would be so much further ahead in their marketing if they understood the basics of the tropes, the current tropes for their target audience. Because it's not just genre. I mean, it definitely breaks all the way down to your actual target audience. And
yeah,
especially,
it does.
like, I know Karen probably gets it too. I get almost all of my authors are like, well, I'm not just this, like, my story's not just this genre. It's got a little bit of this too, and a little bit of this. And, like, when you're putting together a cover, it really does break down to, like, taking a couple tropes from each little spot and combining it and pushing it
Yeah,
harder in one direction, but that
yeah.
way you can pull in all of those audiences.
Exactly. I had one this week that was fascinating. It started out as a paranormal rom com. And when I went to look at rom coms, they're all vectors. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, and the author's just popped on. And so I'm like, well, we can't really do a vector. I don't, know enough about them and stuff. And we talked it through, and we eventually decided to go the paranormal route, paranormal romance route, rather than that. But then you've got sort of the vampire, so you have to have that aspect of it. You've got to have the darkness for the paranormal bit and the glowiness, but then you've got to have, the fun, flirty bit for the rom-commy bit. And yeah, it's just sort of slotting all the jigsaw pieces together to
Yeah.
work out what it is you need to communicate everything you need to communicate to those readers, so that they pick it up and go, that's a book for me.
Yes. Yeah. No, that's so true. Because, well, and like, I always kind of break down, I always ask like for who they consider their comparables to be. And for the couple of authors that I don't, I don't read all of my author's stuff, but for those that I do, or even if I just read a snippet, like a lot of times I'm sending them authors that I'm like, hey, I think that you're comparable. You should be looking at this person for their marketing. We should be looking at some of their details because their audience is your audience too. And when they're done with their book, they're going to be looking for something similar. So we need to pull a couple of the tropes from their stuff into yours. Well,
Yeah.
I'm glad you're listening to us talk while you read.
Nice. And I just had a question as well. So someone said, oh, well, I suppose it's not a question. You spend less time on topography for pre-mades. Mind blown.
Oh,
So
yeah.
yeah, I mean, for me, I've had, I think, one pre-made title stick. Well, actually, no. Other than topography covers, which if I do as a pre-made, they come with the title, period. But for a character cover, I've only had one person keep the title. And so if I'm customizing this font, the last thing I want to do is customize it. Sometimes takes me 3 hours to customize a font,
Yeah.
to then have them turn around and go, here's my title, and I've got to start again. So yeah, less time definitely gets spent on making a pre-made title look pretty, because I'm almost certainly going to have to change the title.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong,
And
we
I know
definitely,
you've had more.
yeah, I've had about,
You've had more people take them, haven't you?
yeah, I've had about 30 to 40%. But I mean,
Nice.
it's one thing that, especially when we're making pre-made covers, like
Mm.
sometimes our authors are buying the cover for something they've already written, they've already got the title. Oh, you're reading my
Yeah.
sample. Excuse a couple of typos. I like just fixed them and updated it and sent it to the publisher. So, fingers crossed. But yeah, I've had about 30 to 40% keep the titles, and it's so interesting how I it's because I'm a admin for book cover events. I work with over 200 cover designers, and that includes critiquing, because we have like specific vetting standards that we require for anything to be put in any of our events for authors to be able to sell. Like we really try really hard to make sure that we're only vetting designers that are safe to
Yeah.
use and we're giving a quality of something that will actually be marketable for the author. And it takes a lot
Yeah.
of time. But we also have a lot of foreign cover designers, and that's one big thing that I always end up teaching them, is that you have to have even your fake title has to be catchy enough, because if it's a poor sounding title on an amazing
Yeah.
cover, most authors, because authors, we love words. So
Mm.
if it has a bad title, we just kind of skim past it, even if it would have been perfect with the
Yeah.
title changed. Like, so that's really
Yeah.
picky. And, I
Yeah.
will spend 30 minutes to an hour on typography for a pre-made, but I'm only going to use the alternates for the letters for that one. I will not customize any of the stuff. Just because, like I
Oh
said,
yeah.
only 30 to 40% keep the titles. But there are some
Yeah.
really fun where there's more and more title generators. Like Story Wrappers has an amazing one for fantasy, and then was it
Sarah's got a really good one for PNR. That's what
Sarah?
I've been using.
Yes, she has the paranormal romance title generator, doesn't she? Yeah,
Yes.
that's
And
a
that's
really good
useful.
one.
And I use Readsies a lot as well.
Yes, there's a couple that I've popped on and used, but I like it's amazing. We have to think about how to market the covers to you guys, like as authors, to make it so that you can buy a marketable cover. Like
Yeah.
it's fairly complicated on both ends.
I know, I know. I spent way too long trying to think up titles. I was in the car today because we had our day off today because it was my wedding anniversary yesterday, and
Congratulations.
so we had about an hour's drive in the car to get to the place we were going to visit. And I was sitting there going, right, I want to do a PWF series. What can I call it? And I spent the entire time trying to come up with words that I could match.
Yes. The cover,
Oh,
the pre-made that I'm working on that is probably going to go for sale in the Black Friday sale. I have no clue what I'm going to title it, and I'm at the point where I have to come up with a title because I
no,
can't finish the rest of my composition.
yeah,
Because that's,
until you know what's.
yeah, you really like I
I know.
can't. It's hard. Well, and that's
Yeah,
something.
yeah, I get stuck on that too.
Well, and like for example, for my cover, my book that I've got coming out at the beginning of the year, because I'm terrible and I have had to learn how to critique cover design, like just covers in general, and learn how to break them down so I can figure out how they're made. Like, it's really hard for me to hire a cover designer because it's hard for me to not be able to see the pieces of their work when I know that all of any reader would just see how gorgeous the artwork is. Like, it's so hard for me to not do that. So I hired an artist, and that was actually one thing I was looking at was how the artist's style would work for typography, because when you're just
Mm,
looking at art, you can do the entire, so like for looking at this, you can use the entire space, but
yeah,
for a book cover, really the high contrast area can only be the top area because the bottom needs to be low contrast for your typography. Otherwise it's
yeah,
not readable in thumbnail. And
exactly.
I
And similar
had to
value so that you've got something to play against.
Yeah. And most artists are not used to having to work in that small of a space. So it was very interesting going through portfolios, seeing who naturally tends to lean in that sort of direction anyways, so that I wouldn't feel like I was being super nitpicky going, I need for this to be like I don't want to be that person. So yeah, that was definitely, and for anyone who decides to hire an artist, that's definitely something to at least address with the artist, is let them know, hey,
Yeah,
I need the bottom third to be, because I know Karen and I both, we will take art that other
yeah,
people
I do a lot
commissioned and we'll do the
of photography.
typography for them because most artists don't have the marketing knowledge for the typography
Mhm.
to help a book sell. And so
Yeah,
yeah, we'll offer a cheaper service where we'll just do the typography for a cover to try and help
yeah,
authors have the most marketable thing possible. But again,
yeah,
if it's too high contrast, no matter what we do, it's not, sometimes it's not possible to make it readable in thumbnail because it's too high contrast.
yeah. Yeah, no, I do quite a lot still of the lit RPG books because they've gone full illustration, which I don't do.
Yeah.
But they'll come to me for the topography, and I'll either be going backwards and forwards saying, say this to your artist, say this to your artist, I need these. And sometimes
Yeah.
they'll just send me the entire PSD layered file, and I'll be like, okay, click, click, click off those layers. This is what needs to happen here. This is what I need.
Well, and I love,
and
that is another thing too. I always suggest, so the Black Friday sale is in book cover events. Currently it's full with a wait list. We've got 30 something designers and we're already starting to get stuff in it. But December book cover events has a massive event, which
oh, cool.
every single designer who wants to is allowed to submit something to it. Yeah, the cover designer directory has their romance thing, but I honestly don't think I'm
Yeah,
gonna have time to make a cover for it. Um,
I've submitted one to
between
that
having a
already.
book
I did
publishing,
a fantasy
yeah,
romance.
I just don't. If I have time, I'll be lucky.
Yeah, yeah. No, I did a fantasy romance because you have to get the first one in for that
Yeah,
on the same date as you. I think it's the
the
12th,
12th.
is it?
Yeah,
I think.
it is 2 weeks before.
So I've submitted one of those, and then the rest of them can come in up to like the 25th for the cover designer directory. So
Yeah,
I figure I
but
can come back to those.
yeah, if I find the time, I would like to try and do that. I mean, we've got 2 weeks, so maybe. But I'm also about to start up a couple big customs that
Yep.
I'm definitely ready for, but they're very unique ideas. So they're going to take a lot more time to like figure out
Wow.
the right stuff, and they're all with first-time authors as well. So it's a
Got
little bit longer process just because you have to teach the marketing side for their specific niche.
yeah,
So you guys can come to a good middle ground to find a really marketable cover for them, because I
yeah,
don't want someone to spend money on me if it's not something that at least I did my best job that I possibly could to help it sell. Like
yeah.
want my books to like I want my covers to help somebody sell their stuff.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm lucky. I've got two USA Today bestsellers coming up for the two series that I've got, so
Ooh.
I don't have to educate anyone, which is nice. And I enjoy it, but it's
Yeah.
sometimes nice to just have them go, well, I want this. I mean, I had the email for the next one I've got coming up this week, and it was just, here's the title. Same couple, obviously, and I'll see what you come up with. Like, cool. Like those kind of briefs.
Those are
So,
fun.
and then
Yeah.
I've got a topography one of all things. So I'm really looking forward to that one. So,
That'll be awesome. I have my next one is a steampunk Victorian, and I am like super
cool.
excited to get to do it because I am such a sucker for steampunk. Like I had several years where I was kind of like I binge watched and binge read everything I could find. Like Halloween a couple years ago, I even like was dressed up steampunk just because I love
Oh
the
my
like
goodness.
mechanical, like it's just a
Yeah,
unique process. And
it
so
is. Yeah, I've never done any. I've actually never read any either, but I've watched a TV show about it where they were like interior decorating as per steampunk, which was quite entertaining.
there was actually a show a couple years ago where they did it like as a competition, room by room, and like each
That's the
team,
one.
yeah, and it was so
Yeah,
fascinating to watch them
it
do
really was. Yeah. Yeah, it was absolutely fascinating, and their outfits and stuff. But yeah, I've never actually read any, and I've not done any covers for them. But yeah,
Yeah, I'm excited to get to do this because like just the gears and
yeah,
like it's gonna be fun. I'm
yeah. I
super.
can't wait to see what you come up with.
We're currently deciding if we're gonna go the vector route or if we're gonna go the person route because the genre is split right down the middle for the two, and especially
Wow.
it's also like it's like a romance, but it's got some like murder mystery kind of stuff going on, and yeah, it's literally the style of the cover
Yeah,
split right down the middle for what
yeah,
is trending right now. So we'll see
yeah,
how that goes.
yeah. Yes, yes, definitely. I had a question actually earlier on that we didn't get to, which was thoughts on AI heads. So I would like to say for P&R, there's no way AI head is completely out, but also a man chest, either a man chest cover or a man chest within a couple, that can't be AI unless that's really, really improved. There's a couple of models that might make it, but chances are not. That's got to be photo.
Yeah, well, and also when you look at AI, there's been a lot of companies that have been coming out with like, they'll combine photos, but I have
Yeah.
yet to find one that actually does everything in a way that is legal to actually use on
Mm-hmm.
a stock photo. So personally, I
Yeah.
won't use them because I have yet to find one
No.
that is safe to do that. Um,
Yeah.
but depending on who your designer is, um, like I will use stock photos, but then there are things you can do in Photoshop to make it look like to change their facial expressions and still keep it natural
Yeah.
or to make it look so it's not quite that same model. So it lets
Yes.
you customize it a bit. But
Yeah. I do that a lot, kind of like, bring the jaw in, make the eyes slightly bigger, make the mouth slightly smaller, so it's that nice beauty triangle that we were
yeah,
learning about.
the
And
beauty tropes. And that is definitely
yeah,
something that, like you kind of have to think about when you're doing covers is you have to have the
I do.
beauty tropes but have it still look like the characters. And so you have to find that balance
Mm-hmm.
because as much as your reader wants for it to look like your character, they don't know what your character looks like when they're first looking at your cover and deciding if they're going to read your book. So it also
Yeah.
has to hit those beauty tropes enough that they're going to
Yeah.
pick it up because they scrolled past and went, "Ooh, that's pretty. Like I like
Yeah.
that." except for
Yeah,
horror
your
stuff,
cover is a
it's not
marketing
looking
piece.
pretty for
It's
most of
for
it.
those people who haven't read it yet, you know. And it's
Exactly.
so important. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's crazy when you get. I mean, I know, I made that mistake as an author with my first book, and I went in and I said her armor has to be like this, the boots are this color, and thankfully my designer pushed back and said, if I do the boots in those color, we're not going to show up, and it's we're not going to be able to read the typography, which is where they're over, And yeah, and it's just like no, you cannot. And I actually went back and changed the book, and therefore her boots were a different color in the book. And now I look back at it, I think, why? No one's probably even remembered what the cover is by the time she gets her boots. Yeah, but
Well, and
that's what you do, unfortunately, as an author.
talking about the AI stuff too, you will find a lot of covers that have 3D rendered Daz faces. And like she was saying, there's
Yes,
very few models that really
there.
can make it work. And honestly, it takes an artist being able to go in and really manipulate it very strongly. And there's
Yeah.
very few who can do it right. Unfortunately, a lot of artists and designers who try to do that, because they focus so much on how to make it look pretty and not on the actual like real life faces, they don't do enough studies on those. It ends up looking very, very plastic, and most readers, especially in paranormal romance and fantasy as well, but for the most part, it just doesn't look real. And the worst of it is the eyes. It's next to
Mm-hmm.
impossible to make 3D rendered eyes look alive. Um, so there's a lot of times
Yeah,
actually where I will, like, if I like the rest of what the face is doing, I will like literally just photo bash on the eyes themselves and paint it all so that
yeah.
it does that.
I
Because
find if I'm painting on the eyes, I have to change the shape of what I'm painting because it just doesn't work. It's not what it is underneath. And even then, I wouldn't do it on a cover. I'd only do it on like a character card,
yeah,
because you can't use a photo on a character card because they're wanting to merchandise them. So the licensing is just cost prohibitive.
yes.
So I will paint on the eyes, but I would change the shape of those eyes because they don't look right.
No, they look dead. Honestly, it's a very zombie type thing, which your readers
Yeah,
notice, especially
yeah.
for first in series, more often than
Mm-hmm.
not, readers they don't realize they're looking for this, but more often than not, if they're attracted to person-based covers that have a full face, they want the eyes to connect with them, and it literally is a big part of what catches their eye. It's almost like they make that mental and emotional connection with the book because it's eye to eye contact. The rest of the
Yeah,
series is not as important, but that first one, it's it's really important. And that's part of why it's more limited in like posing and that kind of thing that you can do for body language as well because it
yeah,
needs to connect with the reader.
yeah, yeah. I mean, we're hardwired as humans. Our brains notice what we're looking out of. We think of ourselves as up here in our brains, so we notice this area the most. And if someone else is looking at us, it's part of how you make that rapport and connection.
Yep.
So you're going to do it on a book cover. It's just the way it is.
Like,
Some of the romance ones can get away with it when they're looking at each other lovey-dovey, but that's it. None of the fantasy ones, you want them looking at the camera
yeah.
because then they're looking at the reader going, would you like to read my story? Kind of thing. And
Well, and
yeah, it makes a big difference.
I think that's also a big part of why more often than not, when an author puts out there saying, do you prefer people on covers or no people on covers? It's like a resounding no people on covers. But when you actually go look at the marketing of what is selling, I think a big
It's
part
a
of
lot of us.
why you're doing so well. Yeah, it's depending on the genre, but yeah, it's definitely pushes more in that direction. And I think part of it is because of the eye connection and body language connection type thing. And it's also part of why one of the trends that we've been seeing over the last, I would say, year to 2 years has been for covers to have things in the foreground, almost looking like it's in front of the title, or having elements that are coming towards you, because again, it's connecting in a subconscious sort of way, and it almost feels like it's reaching for you, so you need to reach back, and you're going to give it more than half a second as you scroll past it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You do see a lot. I mean, especially like for me, I see them a lot on like the paranormal romance where there's like petals or
Uh-huh.
leaves or something like that, or pieces of glass coming at you, sort of like here kind of thing on the cover kind of thing. So
Yeah.
yeah,
It's
and
amazing
it's
what
fun
goes
because
into that.
you can play them out with the topography as well, and like have some of them interacting, some in front, some behind, and that just sort of brings the whole lot to me all together, which I love.
Yes. Well, not I would say more urban fantasy, but there's like kind of a cross where paranormal romance is more urban than paranormal. They have kind of this interesting thing that they some of them do with their typography where they'll like put it on the road or the wall where it's almost like it's moving away from you and like it pulls you with it as you're scrolling past, and
Yeah,
it's interesting to see how that shape changes. And that's actually one of the only times that urban fantasy and paranormal romance get away with sans serif fonts.
yeah,
Those are basically the only covers that get away with that is when it has that feeling and that effect.
yeah. That's one I actually want to do. I've had a really good one here. I admit the snakes look like they're coming towards me are turn offs, so it can be work. It can work both ways. I agree. Not sure I want to read those books with all their snakes. Yeah, snakes are a big thing in dark fantasy, but yeah, there's a lot of
I
people who don't like
struggle with
snakes.
snake covers or spiders. If there's snakes or spiders on a cover, like, and I'm spending a
Yeah,
week or two working on that because I'm not sometimes I can be a quick turnaround designer, but because I do so much back and forth with people, and because of my weird working hours, like I
yeah,
only do one custom a week so that I have the time to be able to have that communication with the author without it being a problem. Um,
yeah.
and yeah, that's so it'll
I
be like a
couldn't do
whole
spiders.
week of like staring at snakes and having to scroll through pictures and rendering them and yeah.
Yeah, snakes are fine. Spiders are no way. I refuse to do
I
I
had a
just can't even look at them.
I had a
I
spider.
remember one lesson we had, and there was a bunch of like sort of insects, and I'm like, I'm not looking, I'm not looking. You can tell me what you're doing, but I'm not looking.
Was that in Jeff's or Mariah's?
Jeff's.
That sounds like something he would do too, to be totally honest with you.
Yeah, I think he gave up and went and did something else because there was too many of us going. No, I'm not going to look at that.
I love
Oh, one
that.
of my authors said I have a dragonfly phobia. So the ones with dragonflies, I'd rather look at a snake cover. Oh, that's not good.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay. So I have a horrible fear of moths.
yeah,
So
ditto.
I
Any
totally
bugs, basically. So dragonflies, moths, even butterflies. I just don't want them near me.
that was actually the very first cover I ever sold was this woman in a red dress sitting on a throne with like butterflies attached all over to her from with strings. It was the very first cover
Wow.
I ever sold. And actually I think my Facebook group, it's still my cover photo. Cause like
Wow.
I love how it turned out so well. It was like the first one
That's
that I
awesome.
was like, okay, I can do this.
Yeah, yeah. I don't mind looking at butterflies. I just don't want them near me. But even looking at anything else with bugs, no,
Yeah.
just can't do it.
Sorry, I'm watching
But
my
my friend was like that with snakes, so I can totally understand that.
yeah. Well, I'm trying to think. Fortunately, paranormal romance for the most part tends to lean more like dragons, wolves. Like they
Yeah,
aren't so heavy on the snakes. I work in a lot of fantasy, so snakes are definitely a like big request, especially on typography covers. I get a
yeah,
lot of requests for snakes right now.
yeah,
And so,
yeah.
which
Dark
is also
fantasy, they're massive.
yes. Which
Yeah,
sometimes I'm like, is there actually a snake in the story or is this symbolism? Like, is there another symbolism we can do here that's not a snake?
yeah. I don't. Yeah, I'd be all right with doing a snake, but
I've done
I guess
several.
that's like,
not as
I don't
many.
think I have actually done one, thinking about it. I'd be fine with them, but I don't think I have actually done the snake one, weirdly enough.
I have a pre-made that I did that was like the two snakes with the crown, and then I've done a couple customs. There was a like Greek retelling with like a Medusa. It was a Beauty and the Beast
Oh,
Medusa. And that was like interesting because we had snakes all like woven into the like custom border that I made and then
wow.
like adding it into
Yeah,
all the other details too.
yeah,
That was very it turned
yeah.
out really pretty,
Oh, yeah, I can imagine.
but
But yeah, you can stare at them and yeah.
30 snakes just in this, so that's fun.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, it'd be fun. But yeah, couldn't do it with bugs. I'd just go, no, not doing that. Work with someone else.
We do have some friends that I know would love those kinds of covers, so
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that sort of stuff is really big in lit RPG, and yeah, but I thankfully never got asked to do a spider cover.
Oh, just wait. With you get more and more into the monster
Yeah,
romance.
yeah. At the moment, it's just horns. But again, I think Amazon is cutting back on those. They have to have a human face,
Yes, they
otherwise
have to
they
have.
end up start. I think they unpublish the book, do they, or do they just refuse AMS ads? I'm not sure.
I do know that they'll be shadow banned, and it's next to impossible to get your book unshadow banned once it happens. But
Yeah,
because if it's not humanoid enough, it crosses into that gray area of the worry of bestiality type
yeah,
things. And so I will say there's been a few authors covers that I've seen revealed recently on TikTok that I've been like,
yeah.
we will see what
I
Amazon
know.
says about this long term because that's a little bit, especially since they did their heavy crackdown on Lit RPG and made Lit
Yeah,
RPG clean up their covers. I mean, like
yeah.
we talked about last time, I mean, that did a huge 180 about a month ago. So,
Because I've seen ones, from before that were Minotaur heads, and yeah, no. So it's all genres. I've just got someone asking, how does that work for lit RPG with they have to have a human face, and yeah, it's tough, but they do, especially if there's like romance in it. But even then, it's got to have some kind of human face.
yeah, if
Obviously
I would,
dragons are all right, and wolves are all right, but if you've got like two people looking at each other longingly, they got to have human faces.
yeah. The Amazon has this huge list of stuff that they update every couple of months with like specific like if they're touching, they cannot be touching in these ways, in these positions, their hands can't be in these spots and like they have
Yep.
fairly strict guidelines on like if it's a clearly a main person in the thing, it has to be a human-ish type person being represented. But like, for example, if it was like a Minotaur fighting in the
Yeah.
background with a different person
Yeah.
in front, that's okay. They let that go through. But yeah,
Yeah. But if
RPG
you've
for that
got
too. They went through and like
yeah,
they gutted lit RPG. Um, so I mean it was
because I've
huge.
seen one that was like almost like a dinosaur person, the head with long snout and stuff, and yeah, that one came down.
They gutted it for that at the same time that they gutted lit RPG for the erotica type covers. All of that
That's
got
more
down at the
horror,
same.
not lit RPG. They are
Yeah,
slightly
but
different.
it's true. But when you did your basic search on Amazon for lit RPG, it still showed
A
all the.
lot of things label themselves as lit RPG that aren't lit RPG. It's a very loose genre
Yeah,
still.
but do you think
Um,
200 authors suddenly all at the same time decided that they were going to no longer like they were going to change their covers? Because that's what I'm
oh no,
saying.
of course not. But
That's what I'm saying. Like
they
Amazon,
are the harem books, not the lit RPG books.
yeah.
That's what I mean. They label themselves as lit RPG because there are similar, if not an almost identical overlap. Because most of the authors who write lit RPG also write harem, but they sometimes write in pen names so that their
Yeah.
kids don't know that
No,
they write
I
harem.
I'm literally just
But
talking about if you go on Amazon,
yeah,
and you search lit
yeah,
RPG, they booted all of the erotica covers from the basic
yeah, all the
search
harem.
of that. And
Yeah,
so it did they create a new category like for the search to where like did they just kick them out of the basic search, do you know? Or
you still see harem covers all the way through. I've spotted them in all sorts of genres still. So they're still there. They just, in the bestseller lists
yeah.
and stuff.
It makes me wonder if
But
maybe there's just like a shift in the trend of like what was currently
oh
popularly
no,
selling, and maybe that was part of
no,
why.
harem will outsell lit RPG like something like 10 to 1 at the moment.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
It's
that's
yeah,
in general. If it's steamy and romance, like even no matter what the genre, it's gonna outsell almost anything else. I mean, don't get me wrong,
yeah.
2000, 2005 YA fantasy was like it. It was huge, but even then, romance was still outselling it for the most part.
Wow, yeah, yeah. I've got one author who he writes both harem and lit RPG, and initially his lit RPG was doing much better than his harem because we got the tropes on the cover wrong. He told me it was an urban fantasy book, and it wasn't. It was a harem book, so I gave him an urban fantasy cover, uh, and so we redid it to be a harem cover. And it literally went from 20% of his sales being this harem with a urban fantasy cover and 80% being his lit RPG. And his sales of his lit RPG didn't change, and suddenly it's only accounted for 20% of his sales, and his harem books are 80% of his sales. And it's just
Well,
because we did put a harem cover on it.
yeah,
And so now he's pretty much writing all harem because of it.
that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, it's
Yeah.
amazing. And he's only been going, what, a year and a half writing? Because I was his first cover designer,
Aw.
and he was one of my first clients as a cover designer. And so we kind of grew up together, kind of thing. And he's now a full time writer. He supports his family with that, and doesn't do anything else. So yeah, harem really does pay off. But
Yeah.
yeah, like you
Well,
said,
I
go to
feel like
those.
even in paranormal romance, the harem like subgenre of it has been picking up steam very quickly over the last
Yeah,
year in popularity. I
yeah,
definitely I definitely feel like I've been
yeah,
seeing
massive in the lit
progression.
RPG groups because again, like I said, it's the same authors, and
Yeah.
they want that in. So Alison says, I can't remember where I heard it, but supposedly sweet, clean romance is having a resurgence. I've
Yes.
seen the sweet Omega romance, um, like make a resurgence or make a new thing. I'm not sure which, but it got big. how about how about anything else? Have you seen anything else? It's not really sort of like
So
something I go into, like the
so I've
contemporary
actually
certainly.
noticed just with the sweet clean. So I think TikTok has been helping with this too because TikTok it it used to be that like it was basically just here's book talk. And then the authors decided, "Oh, readers are here, they're doing their book talk thing. We want to be a part of this." And when it first came on, it was kind of like a madhouse as authors were coming on. And then it pushed really heavy into steamy. And then there was this backlash of like a group of people who didn't want steamy. So
Uh-huh.
now TikTok has been interesting because it's the book talk area has been dividing up into multiple different subgenres. So like you still have the book talkers that are like the main
Yeah.
reviewers, but then you're also getting a section that's only seeing steamy stuff, a section that's only seeing the sweet clean stuff, a section that's only seeing the YA fantasy stuff. It's been really interesting to watch, and it totally makes sense because why not use the algorithm to your advantage to only see the stuff you're actually interested in? And so if
Yes.
you let the algorithm do that, then you're not seeing the other stuff anymore. So the book talk community is definitely seeing a big divide starting to show up through it. That's been
Uh-huh.
really interesting to watch. And it's been really interesting to watch too that there's been a crossover over the last few months on TikTok between the fantasy book talk area mixed with
Oh,
D&D and cosplayers. Um,
oh no.
and that has been, and I actually think that is probably going to pick up and kind of stay through the next year, probably because of the Wheel of Time coming out, because of
Yeah.
A Court of Thorn and Roses, because of the Lord of the Rings show coming out on Amazon over the next year. Like, I think we're gonna see a pretty big like jump on that.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to that. I'm getting into the fantasy romance because of it, because it's like shows that fantasy side. So
Yeah.
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 Alison says, I see it all. The algorithm must have a field day with me. Love it all. I like it.
Yeah. Mine, you can
Yeah.
tell that, like, I always joke that I'm basically the hot mess book mama, and my algorithm basically shows me that too. Where, like, I've got all the bookish stuff, I've got book talk, I've got the author stuff in a couple genres, and then I have the hot mess moms, and I'm like, oh, you get me. Like,
Nice. Yeah, I need to find what I like do on TikTok. I haven't really gotten there yet.
yeah,
So
I
I
have a lot
haven't
of,
the Fantasy Mountain Court yet. I should. I'll have to look it up.
it's so good. Ooh, and I totally fangirled because A.K. Mulford, the one who wrote that, agreed to read my arc for my short story.
Oh wow.
Like, I was like, I feel so weird saying this, but like, would you be willing to? And she's like, yeah, she's like, it's only 6,500 words. Like, it's short. She's like, I couldn't handle a whole book, but like, I enjoy
Oh
talking with you
cool.
on here, so I totally fangirled big time. But yeah,
Nice.
we're doing good. We're
I'll have
just
to read that one.
books and oh, you definitely should. She's got a couple novellas out, and her next book is sorry, saying what my kid's fussing, making sure she didn't get stuck. Sometimes her legs get stuck between the bars right now because she hasn't figured out that she's not quite as small as she used to be. Yeah,
Yeah, TikTok is cool, connecting authors and readers and creators. It is cool.
I love it. Well, and
I'm
then it's kind of fun because, like, as cover designers, we're coming in here in sort of, it's kind of hard because our target audience is sort of all over the place because we're not necessarily pushing for the readers. We enjoy the readers. Like, and because I write
yeah,
and do covers, like I enjoy having the readers on there too, and I enjoy kind of like teaching all of that stuff. But at the same time, like, you hear people all the time say you need to niche down, and like ultimately, as cover designers, we can't do that because otherwise we would just be attracting other cover designers, and that makes no sense for
exactly.
us to do on TikTok. So like
Yeah,
for me, I'm like my niche down is basically I talk about books and nerdy stuff. Like I'm,
yeah,
you know.
yeah. And I need to do more of that. I've niched down too far, and I'm just getting the book cover designers following me.
Aw.
So yeah.
I have someone just said that they're loving being an ARC reader for me. The story is amazing. Well, thank
Oh,
you.
cool. That's
I've
awesome.
had really good feedback from it. I'm a little nervous because I'm in the middle of writing two series because sometimes I'm not in the mood to write super romantic type stuff and sometimes I am. So, like the ARC copy that you have is what will be my reader magnet and it's like the beginner intro to a gender bender fairy tale retelling series and like
Oh, cool.
the couple that you're reading about and the mirror play a huge part in that world. And that's my like romantic one. But the book I actually have ready to publish, like it's edited and done. I'm just waiting on the artist to make my cover. Um, is my like high fantasy where it has romance in it, but that's not the main point of the story. It's definitely more of like a cross between epic and high fantasy. So I'm actually a little bit nervous because that's going to get published first. And I'm like, oh, how many people am I going to upset? Because like I have this out and like I have people loving it. I have people wanting to sign up for this. And like the next thing I'm releasing, again, it has romance, but it's not for that world and it's not as heavy.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm a little,
Tough. Yeah.
we will see
Yeah.
how
It's
that
very tough.
goes.
Yes. Well, Alison says she has 4 series going. She's writing. I'm insane, but they all have romance. That's good.
My
Wow, 4 series. I
second
couldn't
book,
keep it straight.
yeah, my second book for this series, my like high epic fantasy, it definitely pushes more like the relationships are a lot more important. Um, the
Mm.
first one, the problem was that I wrote it over 5 years, and the first 3 years of it, I basically only read like epic fantasy. Um,
Oh,
and so that was my experience. Hmm.
yeah,
Well,
so
I'm
that's
going
what
to
came.
be sending out art copies for that very soon. So if you sign up for my newsletter, they're going to be the people who get the art copies for that first. But yeah, it's all ready to go. It's been edited
Nice.
twice technically because I had to do once before I
Wow.
sent it out for betas, and I just finished my edits for this, so like it's ready. I just need my covers,
Wow.
but I'm also kind of trying to figure out how I'm gonna fit. I need to figure out when I'm publishing it so I can specifically not overbook myself on book covers during that
Yeah.
time. Because
Yeah.
just
That
being
first
part of this
month or so,
anthology
it's
is
just
push.
mad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm like, one of our cover designer friends is also a international best-selling author, and she's helping me with the release of this first book so she can teach me from her experience. And like, I'm paying her to do it, don't be wrong, I'm not like getting freebie stuff, but she's
Yeah.
helping me with the marketing, with the side, the more like the ads and that kind of stuff. And even though she told me that like she thinks I'm crazy because I've done like the TikTok stuff, and like even in the anthology,
Yeah.
I'm in an anthology with other international best-selling authors, and so far I'm the only
Yeah.
one that has like all of the reviews are from me, and like all of the referrals for the ARC stuff, they're all from my stuff. And so I had a couple people message me today of like, how many ARC copies have you had requests for? And I'm like, around 150. And they're like, I wish that would be the case. Like, it's like I'm on cloud nine, but
Wow.
I also feel like I'm spinning out because I've been doing so much so fast for this. So
Yeah.
after like the first week, I'm gonna need a good nap. Sorry, the whole point of me saying that was that I'm gonna have to like figure out my release date soon, since currently I'm booked up for custom book covers through the middle of February. And so I'm like, I need
Wow.
to figure out that date soon so that I can take at least that week, if not 2 weeks off from
Yeah.
covers to be able to focus on the marketing push for releasing that
Yeah.
book.
Because that was a full-time job. I don't know how authors do like the rapid release month to month to month. I mean, phew,
It's impressive.
you'd be just permanently spending your time marketing and not writing. Yeah.
I'm always impressed when I see people who are able to do that because I just can't handle.
I know.
But
It's
I will
incredible.
say it does help. You know, she was saying she's got 4 series that she's working on. And I will say that is one thing that's been awesome about being a book cover designer is if I have a story idea, I write it down, and to kind of like let it go, I'll make a pre-made cover for it. And like at
Mhm.
least I've turned that idea into something, and it's almost like I'm, even though it's not going to be written for the exact same story, like I can hand it off to somebody else. Like it doesn't, I feel like it served its purpose still. Um,
Yes.
but especially when I'm currently deciding if my epic high fantasy is going to be 2 or 3 books. I'm like right on the fence for that. But my retelling one, I have like 6 planned. They're all like
Wow.
standalones, but in the same world, which is what most fairy tale
Wow.
retellings do. And I'm
Yeah.
like, I can only handle writing one book every like maybe 8 or 9 months. So that's years of stuff for me already. I don't need to add on to that
Yeah.
list.
No, I managed, I think the most I managed was 60,000 words in a month. And that was just like full, nothing else.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I'm really impressed with authors that can do that. Maybe someday I'll turn into that, but honestly I love book cover design so much that I can't imagine my writing overtaking it. Like, and I think writing for me is more fun because I know when my book cover design like took over so much that the like flexibility of the freedom of it, and when it became really a business for me, it's still
Hmm.
fun but not in the same way. And
Yeah.
I don't want my writing to turn into that because I feel like it would like leach into my writing a little bit because it did for a little bit there was an adjustment period for me when I lost some of the flexibility and freedom in my book cover design business just because I was so booked up. But
Yeah.
that also hit me before I realized that I needed to only schedule one custom a week because of my weird schedule.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Whereas I managed to fit in 2 to sometimes 3, depending on, the type of book,
Yeah.
kind of thing. But yes, but yeah, I don't write anymore for that reason. I just love cover design so much. I'm just all in on that instead.
I totally get that.
Yeah.
And it's the
Yeah.
best feeling in the world too. 'Cause as you very well know, because poor Karen is amazing. She puts up with me with like we send stuff to each other for critiques, and like if we're having a
Mhm.
really bad bout, we'll like chat and kind of talk each other down from the ledge a little bit. And
Yes.
I went through a pretty good phase for a little bit where I'm like, I hate everything that I'm making. Not that like it was actually coming out bad, but like I could see what I wanted it to be and just my skill level wasn't at that point. And I feel like I'm finally like suddenly clicking to where
Yeah,
I'm suddenly being able to start making what I can see again. And I'm like, I'm
that's
gonna
awesome.
enjoy the month or two that I am in that stage before
Yeah,
I
because it just does this, doesn't it, the whole way?
as a whole. Jeff Brown, he teaches cover design and illustration, and Karen and I both were in his class for about a year, and he talked about it as like a mountain, and he's like, it's always like it's just like a range of mountains, and you're gonna have all these highs and all these lows, and it's just gonna keep going over and over and over again, and it never ends, and I'm
Yeah.
like,
It's your eye level, what you can see and what you can perceive in the art, and your skill level, and they just do this as they go up. So you're like you can see stuff and you're thinking, why can't I do that? But your skill level isn't there, and then your skill level gets past your eye level and you think, wow, I'm amazing. But then your eye level comes up again, you're like, oh no, this is awful, why can't I do that? And
and
you
writing is
just flip-flop.
absolutely the same way too. Like we
Yeah.
keep seeing these level ups. And I've wondered if maybe that's part of where some of the imposter syndrome comes from because I get it both for my art and for my writing. Like I think part of it is because of that. It's hard to not compare. And
Yeah.
like I was surprised at how many people kind of responded to a TikTok video that I did recently where I was like, I've been reading some arcs and I actually had a couple of the authors message me going, was the video about mine? Because I did a video about an arc or just a book. Because it wasn't actually an arc, but a book that I had read recently. And I had seriously been at the point where I was like, is it even worth me publishing my stuff? Like, am I actually good enough for anyone to enjoy this? And then I read something and I was like, I'm better than this, and this is published and people like it.
Yeah,
I was like,
exactly. There's always books out there like that.
yeah.
And, so, and I mean, you see quotes from like Agatha Christie saying, "I still don't feel like an author," and you're like, "Really? If you aren't, no one is."
Truth.
So, yeah. So at that point, you can kind of let it go and think, "Oh well, I'll just carry on then."
Right?
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Trying to think. 'Cause I know I always have to remind myself, and like when I'm kind of, because I do spend so much time interacting with my authors that I do covers for, I also hear, an awful lot of the same like imposter syndrome, just processing, especially for people who haven't actually finished their book yet when they're doing their cover with me. And, I
Yeah.
have to remind them that like there's no such thing as a perfect book. Like, The Lord of the Rings is amazing. I can't read it, but I love the story and I love the movies. And like Stephen King, world famous, considered to be one of the best writers ever, I can't stand any of his work. Like,
Yeah, I've never tried. Too much of it was.
yeah, like there's no such thing as a
Yeah.
perfect book. You're
No,
never
there
gonna have
isn't.
everybody like it. That's why I love it
Yeah.
was so great when I got big enough into the like deep enough into the author community to start seeing authors celebrate when they got their first 1-star review on their books. And even like established authors, they would release something And they would get so excited when they finally got their first 1 or 2 star review. And I was like, okay, like I like that thought process of, and don't be wrong, I will say for like anyone who is watching this or watches this later, like if you're getting a whole bunch of 1 and 2 star reviews and your your writing is solid, look at your cover because there is a good chance that it's
Yep.
hitting the wrong target audience. Um,
Yeah.
and that,
You got readers shouldn't be reading it.
yeah, like if you're running into the problem of bad reviews, first look at your writing. And because that's the easiest and cheapest one for you to fix. But if you're getting bad reviews and the reviews that are bad are not because your writing is actually having big flaws in it, you need to look at your cover because yeah, you're hitting your wrong target audience. And again, that's where cover
Yeah.
tropes come in.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, you've got to get those right readers to get those good reviews. Yeah. Alison says, Lord of the Rings, Tolkien describes grass too much for a quest book. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, I thought Harry Potter, like the first one of those would have been like close to the perfect book. And then my mom turns around and says, I've never read it. I don't want to read it. I don't like magic. I'm related to you. So, yeah,
It's
there
funny
is no
because
such thing as a perfect book.
one of my cousins she has no interest in ever reading Harry Potter. And local to
Yeah.
me, one of the like historical sites out here does a Harry Potter weekend where like the local college Quidditch teams come out and even compete and like
Oh,
it's a whole thing. It's so
oh
cool.
my
And I
goodness.
was like, I want to go to this, but I need someone to come with me. And she's normally my person that I take to like go look at all the nerdy stuff in the area. And she's like, no, I'm good. How dare you?
I'd be there in a heartbeat.
Like it's so cool. Even
Yeah.
though the last one before COVID hit had to get canceled because we also got hit with a hurricane. So yeah, you know.
Yeah. That was like us yesterday. It was bucketing down out there. We were going to go out yesterday, and it was like, nope, I'm not going out in this. I opened the front door and took a video, and it just as I took the video, it started to calm down. So it's got me in there going, oh look, it's calming down. And I sent it to my mom, and she's like, if that's calming down, I don't want to know what it was before. It's just amazing.
I'm
Oh,
hoping that ours dies down. Like it's quit raining right now, and I'm hoping it stays that way because this weekend our Renaissance Fair is doing their trick or treating at it, and like with all their shows and like their
no.
jousting. Their
Oh wow,
people
yeah.
for it are dressing up as like night zombies to joust, and like they're doing
Oh,
the whole thing. So I'm taking my 2-year-old to that, and I'm going, oh please let it stay dry so that just because out in
yeah.
our area there's not very many people that are planning on actually doing trick or treating anyways. So and she's only 2, so I'm like I would rather take her there and we'll do that for trick or treating this year instead. Like
Yeah.
plus I'm a sucker for
Yeah.
the Renaissance Festival.
Yeah. Yeah, we've got one in our area, and they've moved it, and it's not even in. It's not only is it not in the city anymore, it's not in the county, and it's an hour and a half's drive away in another county. I'm like, really? Yeah, because they
My
have jousting at that one. It's fun.
Oh, that's cool. They also a couple years ago just put in a mermaid, like a mermaid
Oh
tank.
wow! Oh
And my
wow!
2-year-old is all about mermaids right now, so I'm really excited to go show her a live mermaid. Like I think it's gonna
Yes,
blow her mind.
awesome. Yeah, I wonder how they're going to do that. Whether they have like
They
some kind
just
of breathing.
they just get really good at holding their breath for a couple minutes at a time, and they go down, and then they have like 2 parts to the tank. So there's the part that they
Yeah,
come out, and there's like a divider, and they go back into that, so they can go up, get air, and then they come back out. So like it never spoils that like vision.
that's good.
Yeah,
Yeah. Oh wow! God, that'd be amazing to see.
I only know about this stuff because if I specifically follow a couple like professional mermaids on my TikTok because my daughter will like if she sees it, she'll sit there and we binge watch all of their mermaid stuff for a while after that.
Oh wow! I'll have to look some up.
Cool.
That's really cool. I've never even heard of it.
It's kind of fun.
Oh. Yeah. You're looking as tired as I am.
Yeah,
Should we call it
probably
on this
crash
one?
tonight. Um,
Yeah.
well, while we have a couple people on here, does anyone have any requests for specific genres or subgenres or target audiences that like we could talk about next Friday for covers and books and that kind of thing? We've been picking like a genre each week, and then our like TikTok lives. We both have been downloading from TikTok and we're uploading it onto our YouTubes with links for the Pinterest boards that like we've been making Pinterest boards and putting it on there and like adding some notes and stuff so that people can find this later on YouTube because we both know how next to impossible it is to find book cover marketing advice anywhere. So, you know.
Yes.
But yeah, so if
So
anyone
yeah,
has,
if you've got requests for a genre, that
yeah.
would be great. Oh, fairy tale retellings. We did that 2 weeks ago, or 3 weeks ago, actually. I
Which
wasn't around last week. I will point you to my YouTube, Alison, and let you see that. Because, yeah, that was a good one. We went through all of those. I think that may have been our first one, actually, wasn't it?
might have been, yeah.
I think it was our first.
Which we can also um it might be kind of fun to do maybe like a comparison between maybe next week do a comparison between fairy tale retellings and regular high fantasy covers and
Okay.
kind of show what the difference is. We could do that because that is I think a really important thing for authors to understand before they go and hire a an artist or a cover designer. I feel like that's really important to
Got
know.
vote for that.
I think that'd be really fun to kind of dig into.
Yeah.
And we could throw in a little bit of epic fantasy there too, because high and epic fantasy crosses over so much.
Yes. I love epic fantasy. Oh, I have a series planned with both. Awesome. So yeah, we'll
Well,
definitely
that's
cover
perfect.
that then next.
Sweet, yeah. So we'll talk
Cool.
about next week. So we'll be on normally or
Or
sometime between 8:30 and 9 p.m. Eastern, but I have a 2-year-old that I tuck in at that time. So when we pop on depends on when she finally gets into bed.
yeah, but around that sort of time.
Ooh,
So
that's a
yeah,
good
come
one.
join us next week.
I do have a request as well for one of these times to and we can always add it on to part of our stuff to talk about the cost of having a lot of changes on cozy. Yes, ooh, we should. So maybe in 2 weeks we have a request for talking about the changes in the tropes that cozy is currently seeing, and I agree it is doing a huge shift right now in the cover trends. So that I'm totally voting 2 weeks. We should
Yeah,
totally talk about that. That'd be
that
great.
sounds good. Yeah, because I'm really getting into the paranormal women's fiction, and that overlaps quite heavily with
It does.
cozies.
That's
So
true. Awesome. Well, we will talk to
yeah,
you guys later. Thanks for hanging out with us.
yes, yeah, thank you. And yeah, I'll see you later. Okay,